Once you've watched the first 3 tutorials and taken those quizzes, the next thing I want you to do is start working on the CAD problem set number 1. Some of the things to be aware of in the description here is how you should name each file. We've talked about that previously, but please use the proper naming convention. The second thing is the 5 criteria for how I will be grading these files. You don't have to memorize that stuff, and honestly, you guys are not going to know exactly what all that means right off the bat. But as we're going, these things will become more clear, and you will be able to go back and correct those errors. So let's just start with object number 1. I like to have it in one screen and my CAD screen in another, and just kind of flip back and forth. Now, if I just take a look at this, kind of step back and not worry about all the dimensions, but just take a look at this file, I want to look at what is the best way to approach drawing this. The general way that CAD works is by creating a 2-dimensional sketch and by using one of the 3-dimensional features to make that 2D sketch a 3D feature. The simplest of which is going to be the extrude function, and that's what these 10 problems all use the extrude function, so we need to look at it from that perspective. If I take a look here, I can approach this different ways, but I want to look at it as efficiently as possible. So if I look at this as a U, right, it's got a tall leg and a short leg, but if I look at it like a large U, then I only have to do one extrusion from the front to the back to achieve the final shape. If I approached it from drawing from this side, that would be 3 or 4 steps versus the 1 step. So in a pursuit of time efficiency and effort efficiency, I always want to look at it and kind of think for a few minutes before I get started, what's the best way to do this? So now I'm going to start drawing this U on my Fusion program. The first thing I'm going to do is create a sketch. I have to choose which plane I want to draw it on. I generally draw things from the bottom plane, but this one dictates that I draw from this plane face, and you'll see why in a few minutes. I like the line tool. It's very simple. I like to start at the origin, the 0, 0, 0 point. I find it's easier that way. I'm just drawing a rough U shape. It snaps to create straight lines and generally wants to go right angles. So if I let it, it saves me a lot of work later. Now, one thing I want you to realize is all these constraints that were put in because I was letting it click at those right angles. So these are perpendiculars, which means the degrees on this angle are going to be 90 degrees, and I don't have to set that, and that can't change. So that's actually a benefit to me, assuming that's what I want. And you have to realize the computer tries to save you effort by doing that continuously. If that's what you want, it's helpful. Sometimes it's not what you want, and it can be a hindrance, and you have to go in there and actually delete those constraints. All right, so that said, this is my dimension tool. I'm going to enter all those dimensions, and once those are in, I'm going to do an extrude. So under the solid tab, this is the extrude function, and I can kind of pull it that way. And as you can see, I'm approaching the right shape. Once I get all my constraints in there and it's fully constrained, which we'll talk about in more detail later, that object is essentially done. Just make sure you get all the details, but that is the simplest way to do object number 1.